Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters through the Silver and the Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
I'm Jim Beard.
I'm Kirby Evans.
I'm Steve Higgins.
I'm Kenny Smith.
I'm Gavin Reitzer.
I'm Kaylee Blair.
This is Chuck Lordens.
I'm Elliot S. Maggin.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Yes, it's the conclusion of the 1975 Justice League Justice Society team-up crossover event. Everyone has reassembled. Without any further ado, issue 124 published on the 7th of August 1975, just a few weeks after the first birthday of Simon from Menswear. And Peter will now tell us all about the cover.
We have the roll call across the cigar band at the top. From left to right, Batman, The Flash, Aquaman, Hawkman, Green Arrow, and Black Canary, issue 124, November. The line of DC Superstars logo in the centre.
Interesting that it's just JLA members this time, whereas last issue we got a few JSAers.
Very true, very true.
Interesting.
Underneath the Justice League of America banner, we have the Justice Society appearing in a cloud, and they are looking down at some assembled JLAers. The JSA are Wonder Woman, Dr. Midnight, Robin, Wildcat, Hourman, who appears to be all yellow in this.
Yeah, always bothered me that has, quite frankly.
And Johnny Thunder. And Robin is pointing down at the assembled JLAers, who are Aquaman, Flash, Hawkman, Batman, Green Arrow, and Black Canary. And Robin is saying,
"Because you killed us, we Avenging ghosts will haunt you forever."
And Jim, you can go now. That's Robin's dialogue contribution to the story.
That's an episode wrap for Jim Beard, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Jim, thank you so much for taking part. You're a legend. Really, really glad you had time to kind of help us out and to appear on our show. It's really, really cool. Will he be back? Who can say?
Who can say? He can say.
From the window here, when you see he's made it, he's way to his taxi. He's off to the airport, and we can get on with the rest of the story. Our opening splash image, again, quite often the case at this point, echoes the cover, but before we get to describing the image, we shall jump through the roll call. At the left side of the page, we have the members of the Justice League of America.
Batman,
Black Canary,
Aquaman,
Hawkman,
Green Arrow,
Flash. And at the right-hand side page, we get the assembled members of the Justice Society of America.
Robin,
Wildcat,
Wonder Woman,
Johnny Thunder,
Hourman,
Dr. Midnight. And the big central image echoes the cover in that we see ghostly images of the members of the JSA floating around the sort of cross memorial that's been put up in their name, I suppose, and the assembled JLAers standing looking at them, and see the ghostly forms of Wonder Woman, Robin, Dr. Midnight, Wildcat, Johnny Thunder, and Hourman. Hourman still looking all yellow like he does in the cover. How annoying. And Batman is saying,
"As the bodies of our friends of the Justice Society are laid to rest, we of the Justice League resolve to avenge their deaths."
Captioning begins.
Travel across time and space and 3 dimensions as the Justice League of America ferrets out a diabolical foe who had dared to pit friend against friend and succeeded.
And we get the title of this epic story,
Avenging Ghosts of the Justice Society.
And we get the credits.
From the minds and memories of Elliot S. Maggin and Cary Bates, writers, as drawn by Dick Dillon and Frank McLaughlin, and edited by Julius Schwartz.
Superb. So the story basically picks up from that opening splash image. We see the memorial, which is like a tall cross with 6 other little crosses out in the bars, and the heroes are all looking up at it. Green Arrow is saying,
"A fine send-off we gave those guys. We might as well have shipped them to the morgue, COD.
To which Hawkman replies,
"No need to get vulgar, Archer. We may have delivered the blows that actually destroyed them, but it was the villainy of a yet unknown enemy that tricked us into it, and we owe it to our comrades to find that enemy."
Standing in the background, we now see Elliot S. Maggin. And he's thinking to himself, he looks very sad at the turn of events. "Talk about letting your fantasies run away with you. If I weren't secure in my sanity, I might doubt I'd ever have seen a battle that took place here as the Justice League members defeated what appeared to be members of the Criminal and Justice Society." We then get flashbacks to the fight from the tail end of issue 123 as Elliot's memories continue. And then it turned out that the Shade was a camouflaged good guy, Dr. Midnight, just as the Gambler turned out to be the Justice Society's own Hourman. What looked like the Huntress was really Wonder Woman, while Wildcat had been done up to pass for the Sportsmaster. The evil wizard actually was Johnny Thunder, and when the icicle melted away, there was revealed the grown-up Robin of Earth 2. All of them dead. And then we get a shot of Elliot standing between Black Canary and the Flash as some captioning kicks in.
But who is this mysterious narrator solemnly deferring to people who, until a few fateful hours ago, he thought to be mere legends? To explain the young man, we must recap a bit of background about the way the cosmos is woven together as parallel worlds, such as the JLA's Earth 1 and the JSA's Earth 2 can exist in the same space, yet a dimension apart.
And we get a cracking shot of the two overlapping Earths.
But there is another Earth, the one you live on, called Earth Prime. A world where the Justice League of America is just a comic magazine published in a skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan, and edited by a certain gruff, blustery gentleman.
Yes, and thank goodness we start with the exterior view of the skyscraper this time. From inside we hear the voice of Julius Schwartz as he is saying, "Hope those two guys manage to get back home sometime." And we see him at his desk with a handy identifying nameplate, and he's sat at his typewriter and he's thinking, no one would believe what I've been through with them. But maybe if I wrote it all down, I could get out of my system and get my hands to stop shaking. And then we get a nice little caption in Julie typeface, which goes like this. "It started when I left the office for a moment, and these two writers, looking for an excuse not to think up a story, found a toy." And then we see Cary Bates and Elliot Maggin in a nice rippled flashback bubble playing about with the cosmic treadmill, with Elliot saying, "Cary, you're trying to tell me this is the real article? The cosmic treadmill built by Flash to get back to Earth 1?
No kidding around, Elliot. The story I wrote about his visiting Julie was straight."
Toy, my foot. Cary Bates managed to get blown away by it, with a burst of super speed energy that had been dormant until, yes, and we see Cary once again with the treadmill taking off under him as Elliot yells, "Cary, get off that thing before..."
I can't. It's taking me with it.
Back to Julie's typewriter. Elliot Maggin refused to believe the treadmill was real until the very instant Cary disappeared to somewhere. And there's an uh-oh from Elliot. And Julie's typewriter captioning continues, "And I'm guilty too. If they don't return because Maggin convinced me that the only way to get Cary back was for Elliot to hot-foot it after him." And again, great image of Elliot fading out from the treadmill as Julie looks on, startled. Julius pulls his manuscript out of his typewriter with a flourish, thinking, "If I were completely logical, I'd burn this story I just typed, destroy the evidence. But I'm not acting logically. All I'm worried about is whether those two kids can get home alive."
Meanwhile, on Earth 2, home of the deceased members of the Justice Society of America, heavy metal shielding masks the contents of the middle car of a very special train.
Yes, we see a big, hefty train rolling along on the tracks.
It doesn't take much ingenuity to see that there's probably something very, very valuable in this large, bulky object that suddenly takes off in a direction of its own.
Yes, with a burst of green energy, a green flash as there a green lantern in the area. This rail car has lifted itself up into the air.
Surely it's impossible for this mindless boxcar to have decided on its own course of action. That could only have been done by someone wielding tremendous power. Who could it be?
We see the rail car crashing into the ground at force, framed by a nice shot of the calves of the person responsible. And who's that?
Why, none other than Cary Bates.
Yep, and then we see Cary gesturing with his left hand, Cary in his superhero outfit, or supervillain outfit, I should say, gesturing at the rail car, which splits open. And he thinks to himself,
"Poke it right in there, like that, and we've got a $200 an ounce rainstorm of gold."
Yes, because flying out the big hole he's poked in the side of the rail carriage, hundreds of gold ingots flying in his direction. He starts catching them.
Never saw raindrops fall in neat piles like this. And I never thought running around playing supervillain was such a blast until the wizard charged me up.
Cary flying through there, bearing piles of gold nuggets in his hand, and the punters in the street, various shapes and sizes and ethnicities, all point up at him and exclaim,
"Look, up in the sky!
It's a bird!
It's a plane!
It's Cary Bates, the archfiend who's been terrorising the earth!" You see Cary descending towards the wreckage of an airliner. My goodness, what's going on here? I hope he hasn't just killed an airplane full of people. As he descends, still carrying huge piles of gold bullion in his hands, he's thinking,
I thought I was doomed to being a dull, normal guy getting my kicks from what I write. But Superman, even James Bond, never gave me a rush like this kind of life. I feel like a super Peter Pan, and I'll never go home again."
It's the first James Bondish mention in a very long time. I remember there was a Green Lantern story that mentioned the Living Daylights and something else around about issue 45 of jail. But anyway,
I think Cary did a treatment for a James Bond script, but I don't think it was one that was used.
Didn't know that.
I'm not sure how it all panned out, but yeah.
I'll have to do some Googling on that one. Very interesting. As Cary continues to descend, we see a wooden hatchway open up in the ground.
There's my hideout entrance now, under this illusion of debris.
And inside lets all the gold fall to the ground, saying,
Masters, mission accomplished. Ta-da!
And off camera, a voice says,
Congratulations, Bates. A job well done. You show great promise, young man.
and the camera pans out here to get, a very surprising image to my eyes. The captioning does all the heavy lifting.
In whose presence does Cary stand beside that of the criminal spellcasting wizard? There is the Huntress, who stalks upholders of the law like wild game. The Shade, demon of darkness. The Gambler, who uses tools from games of chance to gain his evil ends. The Sportsmaster, drawing on the trappings of competition to thwart the rule of law, as well as the Icicle, who uses numbing cold for the pursuit of criminal profits.
Yes, we see the wizard is gesturing so that some of the gold bars are flying into the open, eager hands of his colleagues. Cary gets a nice close-up as captioning continues.
But as this obscene dividing of the spoils is executed by the wizard's machinations, a formless wisp of almost substance floats through the air and seems to have purpose.
Yes, there's what appears to be a little green cloud, with the vaguest hint of a face floating beside Cary. This cloud thinks to itself,
"Never shall I allow profanity such as has been brought about by the Injustice Society to go unpunished. It is not mere vengeance I will throw against them. It is justice."
But we have no time to hang around trying to figure out what's cooking here, for elsewhere on this tumbling planet...
Yes, we see Hawkman, the Barry Allen Flash, and Green Arrow making haste towards what looks like, very helpfully, we see a sign that says Atomic Plant Number 3, which seems to be exploding as Hawkman says.
"We may be too late, Leaguers. The atomic power plant is starting to blow."
And really in the spirit of things, Green Arrow says,
"It'll never blow as hard as your breath, stating the obvious, big brain."
Flash starts to circle the atomic pile, saying,
"You think you two fellows can hold your bickering long enough to back up the speed vacuum I'm making?"
Green Arrow draws a couple of his finest, fires them off, saying,
"Don't think even you, Speedster, can suck up the fire as fast as the heat absorption gizmos I rigged up on these shafts."
Then see Hawkman flying over the disaster, beating his wings with purpose as he thinks,
"Possibly I can augment Flash's vacuum effect by beating my wings to set up a vacuum of their own to draw the fallout up."
And as he starts to ascend, we see, hopefully this isn't too dangerous, the radiation seems to be following him.
Spectacularly, inevitably, the members of the Justice League of America diminish a disaster on an Earth that is not even their own. As a group of awed onlookers watches and wonders...
Yeah, so after we get a shot of the Flash speeding around the radioactive dust cloud that's floating up into the air, we see Green Arrow, Flash and Hawkman walking away from the site, and some bystanders, some observers if you like, one of them saying,
"The JLA members of the other Earth are an impressive bunch, I'll give them that."
And his pal says, "But where's our own Justice Society? None of them has been spotted in days." The heroes confer with Oliver saying,
"I heard a few murmurings in the crowd, guys. When you figure we're going to own up to murdering these people's heroes?"
"Indulge your self-destructive streak all you want, Archer, but don't drag us down to destruction with you."
Yes, and the heroes do all look very regretful. There's a slow dissolve.
At that moment, on the deck of a cabin cruiser...
Yes, it's great. We see Black Canary and Batman getting stuck into a bunch of hoods. Fisticuffs a go-go with Canary saying,
"How long do we have to fill in for the Justice Society, Batman?"
Obviously, until we can devise a workable alternative, Black Canary. And until then, I suggest we make it our primary concern to crack down on crime here, which involves getting to the diamonds the smuggling ring has stashed in the ship's hull."
And at that, amazingly, we see Canary tripping one bad guy so he falls into the water, and judo flipping another one so he also goes into the sea, as Batman concludes things saying,
"Logical, yes?"
And with that, Batman kicks two of the bad guys at the same time, sending them head over heels into the drink as well.
"With you, that's as easily said as done, Batman."
And at this point, we can just about make out the name of the boat. What does that look like to you, Pete?
Mabel?
Mabel, okay.
Mabel?
Can't remember an Atlas character with that name, but not to worry. Aquaman has arrived in the scene, and very helpfully, he's got a couple of giant octopuses to lift the bad guys out of the water so they can be dealt with. That's pretty cool. We haven't had a giant octopus type situation or giant squid for quite a long time. Arthur is saying,
"I've got these characters under control, you two, but where's your friend?"
"The young man from Earth Prime? Elliot Maggin?"
He must have spirited himself away during the confusion, but where?
As the trio of JLA heroes notice his absence, the young writer is seen many miles away on a strange screen.
The strange screen appears to be a facet of a large pink crystal. We can see Elliot walking along a street. A voice can be heard saying,
"Is that the man in question?"
And we hear Cary Bates reply,
"I think so. He sure walks a lot like Maggin does, yes. I see his face clearly now. He's here on Earth too."
Yes, we're with Cary Bates and the Injustice Society, and the wizard looks down at the image of Elliot on the screen and says,
"Your fellow writer can pose a serious problem, Bates, unless we can manage to use him to lure the Justice League."
This prompts the Huntress to say, "Brilliant, wizard. Use him as bait to snare the Crusaders into our trap." At this point, Cary has obviously been struck by inspiration as he exclaims,
"Oh wow, that'd be phenomenal. And I'd be the one to put the JLA 6 feet under with their do-gooder pals."
Oh my goodness, I don't like this evil Cary Bates. I mean, his haircut's bad enough, but anyway.
Presently, on a quiet street nearby...
Yes, Elliot walking along, looking up and seeing Cary descending towards him. Elliot exclaims, "Yow! Whoever dreamed up this costume freak has a heck of an imagine... Cary? Where have you been the last few days? What are you doing flying around in that crazy Union suit? Hey, what are you doing to me?" And we see that Cary is gesturing towards Elliot, and a giant golden bubblegum bubble, it looks kind of like something out of a David Lynch thing, starts to emerge from his mouth, with Elliot asking, "What's this thing coming out of my mouth anyway? Will you say something to me? Hello? Goodbye? How's your dog?" And we see that, well, very helpfully, Elliot explains, "This gum bubble is getting bigger the more I talk. Is it being made out of my words?" And we see that the bubble has grown and is starting to absorb Elliot into it. Cary takes to the air, bearing this now very large golden bubble along with him, which has Elliot trapped inside. And Elliot is still rabbiting on, and he's saying, "Think that's how you get me to shut up, hey? Well, till you at least start acting like a reasonable..." And as they fly off, we realise that they're being observed by the strange green wisp of smoke that was observing the Injustice Society earlier on. And this little wisp of green smoke, have you guessed who it is yet? It's thinking to itself,
"How much longer will I remain a silent witness to this chicanery? I must make my decision soon, or 6 of the Justice League will suffer the same fate as my JSA comrades. The other Justice Society members are on a mission in space, which leaves it up to me."
Oh, well, that answers a few of my questions as to what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and raises another. Continued in the 5th page following, past adverts for some more tabloids, the CBS Saturday morning schedule, including the Shazam live action series, and ISIS, which is worth pointing out. Oh, and there's Scooby-Doo and Bugs Bunny. Another full page of tabloid DC titles being advertised, and the caption at the top of page 10 reads,
"As on an isolated hilltop..."
Yep, we see the assembled JLAers of Batman, Green Arrow, Flash, Aquaman, Black Canary and Hawkman, with Green Arrow saying,
"We started looking for 1 writer, now we're 2 down. What say we do something about it?"
To which Hawkman says,
"Like what, Archer? Implicate ourselves for the JSA murders and leave no one to solve the case?"
"I think that if we just told the public the story, we'd..."
And not for the first time, I'm sure, the Flash interrupts the bickering Green Arrow and Hawkman and says,
"Cool down your collars, you two. We've got a..."
But then he breaks off and points behind them all, yelling,
"Look!"
And then we see a strange disc floating in the air in front of them all, and we hear it talking, saying, "If you can all stop carrying on like the little rascals and follow me, you might be able to determine what gives around here." Which Green Arrow says,
"Hey, that's Maggin's voice. Let's go."
Hawkman cheerfully says,
"Unfortunately, I don't suppose we have any alternative."
So the disc starts to fly off, and the heroes follow it, with Flash carrying Canary and Green Arrow, and Hawkman beating Batman and Aquaman. And this disc is saying, "Hope I'm not twisting your arms too far, guys. I mean, it's a matter of life and death and all." As all that strangeness is going on, we see, again, the little puff of black and green smoke hovering around the cross memorial for the JSA, and it's thinking,
"My form has been shielded by invisibility for too long. The time has come for the Spectre to intervene."
And we see the ghostly Guardian himself revealed in all his glory. We haven't seen him since Steve and I did the last of the Adventure Comics Spectre stories last year. A handy caption reads,
"On an all containing a mass grave for some of the most gallant heroes of our time, the most fearsome hero of all returns."
Gosh. The Spectre then takes to the air, flying off, thinking,
"Never have I undertaken to carry out a plan of this magnitude. But if justice is not to be counterbalanced, I have no alternative. I only hope that in his wisdom, he will give me permission to do it."
On that ominous note,
Minutes pass as the Justice Leaguers track their odd quarry.
Yes, they follow the disc clearly to where Cary Bates had his hideout because we can see all the wreckage lying on the ground. And the disc, much as we can tell from the artwork, seems to be acting strangely because it prompts Aquaman to say,
"What's happening to the disc?"
And then the Flash says,
"Looks as if it's changing."
We see it's turned into like a large gold bubble with Elliot S. Maggin inside. Elliot taps on the surface and says, "Get me out! Let me out of this glop cage!"
It's the writer. The disc was a disguised energy bubble,
holding Elliot in it all the time.
If I knew the substance this bubble's made of, maybe I'd have an arrow to bust it.
Yep, as the heroes all stand around looking at Elliot trapped inside, Batman starts saying,
"That may not be necessary if...
But he's interrupted by, well, we know who.
"No, not necessary at all, Batman, since you'll be too busy worrying about me to bother freeing my bubble-headed friend."
Yep, supervillain Cary Bates is on the scene, and the heroes swirl to look at him. Another voice from off-camera says,
"Nor is he all you'll have to worry about. You're about to be ploughed under, doomed heroes."
Yes, because the Wizard and the Shade and the Icicle and the Huntress and the Gambler and the Sportsmaster have appeared on the scene as well. Green Arrow exclaims,
"Looks like a replay of the fight that ended the JSA members."
Hopefully the results will be more positive this time, Green Arrow.
Elliot gets a close-up, looking very panicked at the end of page 11 as he thinks, "For the love of all that's... wow! The most spectacular fight in the history of the cosmos is spinning around me, and I can't lift a hand to help." Oh good, the first panel of page 12 will definitely make it to the socials because it's a nice big fight. We see the Huntress throwing bolas around the ankles of Hawkman as he takes to the air. We see the Shade scooting Green Arrow in the face with some ink by the looks of things coming out the tip of his finger. Icicle blowing some cold air into Batman's face. The Gambler assaulting Aquaman with a little spray of playing cards. The Flash and the Wizard looking at what looks like a giant yellow banana skin on the ground. Could be anything. Listeners, what do you think the Wizard has conjured in front of the Flash? Peter will tell you where to send your suggestions at the end of the episode. And we see the Sportsmaster with a can of spray paint in his left hand spraying a target on Black Canary's midriff, while in his right hand he's holding a dart. Oh my goodness. Hawkman hits the ground, completely wrapped up. In the next panel, as the Huntress exclaims, "Ha! I seem to have left the winged wonder all tangle-footed." While Elliot looks on and exclaims, "Hawkman's got a personality that would bore a grapefruit, but he usually puts up a better fight than that." And then he thinks in close-up, "Oh no, I just realised. There's a reason the Hawkeye isn't throwing his punches in the right places. For all its show of inner strength, Hawkman is suffering from guilt pangs for killing the Earth 2 Robin. He, and probably all the JSAers, can't properly fight these characters because they look like the other heroes did when they died." And sure enough, we see from Hawkman's almost point of view as he looks up at the Huntress, the ghostly image of the Robin of Earth 2 hovering above. Elliot's thoughts continue. Each League member is being figuratively haunted by a JSA member he was tricked into killing. Green Arrow snuffed our man, Aquaman put out Johnny Thunder, and Black Canary destroyed Wonder Woman. We see Oliver with his hand up to his face, obviously thinking about our man, and we see Aquaman stretched out on the ground, pinned into position by the Gambler's playing cards, and he's imagining the face of Johnny Thunder. And then we see Black Canary with that dart right in her stomach, and she's clutching her head, imagining the Amazon, and she's thinking,
"Drug dart. Groggy. I think I'm seeing Wonder Woman's ghost."
And we abruptly cut to elsewhere. We see the Spectre standing in a cloud, his hands clasped in front of him. He's looking up at the radiant golden light that's shining down on him, and he's saying,
"When I lay dead, you gave my spirit the power to revive my body with the ring of life. Now grant me your divine consent that I may use its awesome power to return life to the inert shells of these great humans. I only plead on behalf of the nobility brought to this wretched globe by those who called themselves the Justice Society of America. I ask in the greatest solemnity."
And then we see over the Spectre's shoulder the gold radiance and a voice coming from it.
"Ask no longer, my son, for your reasons are good, and your heart is pure. I shall consider."
So the Spectre is silenced, and he hears no more. All the while, a battle rages miles distant.
Yes, we see the Flash trying to get away from whatever that weird yellow thing is that the Wizard has conjured, but he brings his hands up because he's seeing in his mind's eye,
Wildcat! The ghost of Wildcat! Come to avenge his death on me!
We see Batman trying to deal with what the icicle was doing to him as he thinks,
"The only way to get my head out of this ice may be painful, but effective nonetheless."
Yes, basically Batman punches himself in the head so the ice shatters around him. And then he says out loud,
"Now for the icicle. Dr. Midnight? Here?"
And then we see the image of the dead Dr. McNider looming as Batman thinks,
The only explanation for the arrival of a dead man is that I've lost my mind.
We get a nice close-up of Elliot in his gold bubble prison here as he thinks, where'd all these spooks come from? The wizard and those guys are too preoccupied to dream them up. This must be Cary's work, the crud. Sound Cary's out of this bubble. Maybe I can use that fact to preoccupy Cary. Break his concentration. He calls to his former colleague and friend. Hey, Four Eyes. Those are some nifty threads you've slipped into, but what you do with the rest of the tablecloth? Listen, did I tell you how much I liked your last Flash story? About as much as I like having an unclean yak sit on my dinner. Some writer you are. Your dialogue reads like an excerpt from a Burmese phone book. Doesn't seem to be having much of an effect. Indeed, because Cary doesn't change his position or say anything. Elliot thinks, this doesn't seem to be doing much good. He hasn't even flinched. But then we get a close-up of Cary Bates in the next panel. And Elliot thinks, no, maybe it is working. Are those beads of sweat on his brow? And indeed we see perspiration starting on Cary's forehead. Elliot's thoughts continue. He looks bugged. Maybe he's having trouble conjuring up his ghosts. Then he says, if you're such a great plot man, why don't you plot yourself out of this story and give us all a break? And then something seems to be working. Some nice see-what-you-see thoughts from Elliot as he thinks, hey, Hawkman's busting loose. Good show. And the ghost form of Robin is disappearing. And we see Hawkman shrugging off the bolas and starting to flap his wings. And the ghost of Robin starting to fade out. Over Green Arrow's shoulder, the image of Hourman starting to fade out, as Oliver thinks,
Thought I was going bonzo there for a moment.
And then Canary thinks as she sees Wonder Woman fade out.
But the ghost of Wonder Woman I thought was here?
Concluding this train of thought, as Aquaman watches Johnny Thunder's image fade, he thinks,
must be just my overactive imagination.
And then he says out loud,
I'm glad that unpleasantness is... Oh no!
He exclaims as Johnny Thunder suddenly appears in front of him in a burst of golden energy. Canary then says,
say it isn't so.
As Wonder Woman appears before her. And then as Hourman materialises in front of Green Arrow, the Archer exclaims,
what the hey? Say it is so. Nuts or not.
Hourman steps forward at this point saying, I hate to bust up your vacation in the loony bin. And he grabs Green Arrow, obviously pulling him out of the way of some malign influence. As Johnny Thunder says,
but my friends and I are quite real.
As he and the Thunderbolt pull Aquaman out of the way of the playing cards that are pinning him down. And then Wonder Woman says in the next panel, although I'm not quite sure what we're doing here. Black Canary, I order your mind to free itself from its drug-induced state. And with that, she has thrown her lasso around Canary to obviously free her from the effects of that dart.
And simultaneously, with the return of the first three heroes...
Yes, in a golden flash they appear and Elliot confirms, there's Robin, Wildcat, Dr. Midnight. It's unbelievable, but they're back, alive. And obviously off camera, some fisticuffs are kicking off because Elliot remarks, get him in the gut, Batman. They're on the run now. And then we see Cary Bates put a hand up to his head, his eyes wide as he suddenly yells,
oh, piffle. The perfect ultimate plan. Only to fate throw in a blasted miracle.
We see Wildcat grabbing the Flash by the wrist and pulling him out of the way of whatever that big yellow thing is that the wizard has created. As he does so, the boxer says, grab an arm, Flash. There you go. The Flash says,
you're providing the kind of edge that wins battles, Wildcat.
The next panel is a little confusing, but Dr. Midnight says,
now feel your knuckles, Batman.
As it looks as though Batman has attempted to punch him in the jaw and Chuck has arrested the momentum as Batman says,
I never met a ghost with a jaw that hard, Midnight. Or many other mortals, for that matter.
At this point, Elliot moves into action as he thinks, quickly, while Cary's not looking, gotta shift my weight in this bubble and put Cary and his newfangled magical powers out for the duration. And we see that Elliot manages to get the bubble to move with enough force that it knocks Cary flying so that he collides with a oof, knocking himself out and making his glasses go flying, and has a very satisfying clunk as he hits the ground.
Take a deep breath, world, because it's not often you witness a scene the likes of this. As the greatest heroes of two worlds pit their strength and their dexterity, their wits and the magic of an enchanted thunderbolt against a desperate bevy of foes, whose only virtue is persistence.
Yes, so what we see is Hawkman and Robin tag teaming and tangling up the Huntress, lifting her over, Hourman and Green Arrow taking out the icicle, Black Canary and Wonder Woman dealing with the Sportsmaster. Amusingly, as they tie him up in Wonder Woman's lasso, we see a boomerang and some tennis balls and bowling balls and a table tennis mat. And is that a golf ball? A lacrosse stick all flying from his direction. Mm-hmm. We see Thunderbolt has conjured a massive glass case full of water for Aquaman to place the gambler. We see Batman and Dr. Midnight dealing with the Shade. seem to be working out some cooperative use of their abilities there. This page will make it on the socials, don't you worry, kids. And the Flash holding Wildcat and spinning him at speed so that knocks out the wizard. Oh my goodness, we need some dialogue from Wildcat for that. Oh, Mike and head or something. Anyway, we now arrive at the top of page 18 and a little caption says,
"Hi there, we're going to tie it all together now."
Yes, we see Cary Bates shaking hands with Dr. Midnight. Cary saying,
"It's good to be back in my own duds again and be forgiven for the villain role I played."
You can thank Johnny's Thunderbolt for counteracting the spell the wizard used on you, Cary.
Green Arrow shakes hands with Elliot S. Maggin saying,
Listen, if you're ever in Star City, I'll show you the sights.
You mean Black Canary? I already met her.
But
Johnny's Thunderbolt gestures and says,
It's time for these two to go back to New York City on their own Earth. By now, they've got a story to write for that Julie editor they mentioned.
And at that, there are a couple of... as Elliot and Cary disappear. The heroes are all standing, seemingly waving either at each other or into the sky, strangely. And there's a cloud above them, and we hear thoughts coming from the cloud. They may bask in the glory of triumph over evil, but the greatest magic is seen to it, that none will ever know how 6 of their number died and returned to life. And then we see the Spectre emerging from the cloud, the wry expression in his face as he declares, So be it. There's a slow dissolve.
"Remember this building, the towering Warner Communications building in New York's Rockefeller Center?"
And we hear voices coming from an office window.
"Funny, I can't remember how the JSA members reacted to the fact that they'd been dead."
Let's make something up. They all stood on their heads and crowed. They said, How about that, and went home.
The JLA really were nuts, and the JSA never did come back.
And we see the 2 writers, and Julie Schwartz sat behind his desk, and Julie gets the last word as he's saying, Nobody's going to believe a story with a plot snag like that. Get out of here and let me shred my bean soup in peace. The small caption reads,
The end.
And then another very exciting caption reads,
Bulletin! If you enjoyed this JLA JSA team-up, don't miss the Justice Society in its own book. Super Squad. On sale soon.
Yes. And we'll get to that probably not as soon as we originally thought because of JS April. But we'll get to that very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Well then, one of the letters I'm sure will echo something that we're about to say here. God out of the machine and all that, innit? Spectre rocking up and just going, right, Spectre pleading with God and getting every... Where was he when Mr. Terrific gets killed in a few years' time?
Yeah,
Spoilers.
well, he was barely a JSAer.
I know. They get killed in issue 123 after a very light tussle with the JLA.
Mm-hmm.
And then the JLA bury them.
Mm-hmm.
And then but that always makes me think, right, who did they tell the members of their family or their friends or whatever? Did Wendy just think Rex disappeared? What, the lads at Ted's gym? Did they just think he disappeared? And then the Spectre just makes them all blink back into existence. It's a bit tail end of Endgame in a way, isn't it?
It's very cover-uppy. I don't like it. I think a lot of that is basically down to the influence of Cary Bates' plotting power when he's there. Because obviously the JLA weren't using lethal force on the Injustice Society, but somehow they all died. And even although the JSAers arguably are more powerful, I mean, you got Wonder Woman there who's more powerful than the Huntress, but she was killed. They weren't using lethal force. It's when you look at the comparisons, I think it's a case of it's just how Cary plotted it, and the JLA saying, we'll just stay here and act on their behalf after we cover up their deaths and let's pretend everything's okay. I mean, even Green Arrow is sort of complicit, and he's the voice of dissent, but he's still a bit complicit in it. Hawkman's complete, no, we just carry on, we just do this and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I think the whole point of this one is it's the novelty of having the 2 writers involved in the story. You're not really supposed to dwell on the, shall we say, the watertightness of the plotting, but I do find it a little unsatisfying.
Yeah.
I made the Endgame comparison. It's nice when they all kind of blink back into view, and it's, especially when it's from the point of view of the JLAers who still think that they've killed them, but it's just like, the setup's all really good, but it just... with the click of their fingers, everything's fixed, and it's just like, I'm not sure how I would have done it. Maybe I wouldn't have had them die in the first place. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. There's a certain dissonance from actual reality in this one, given the fact Elliot and Cary are coming from the real world, but they're going to Earth too. But then there's this fight in the aircraft carrier, which seems to be deserted, by the way. No one else is actually on this thing.
Yeah.
Which, again, makes it feel a bit sort of unreal. I mean, there are hardly any other supporting characters in this.
The aircraft carrier was in the last issue.
I'm talking the story overall over the 2 issues.
Okay, right, okay, sure.
So I think a lot of that is down to, and again, it's my hand-wavium explanation, it's Cary's plotting power. It's the writers influencing what is happening as they are there, because it's a reality that they can kind of manipulate to a certain extent, whether consciously or subconsciously. And obviously Cary's got this evil influence on him as well.
I mean, that's the thing. It's a bit circular because Cary has been affected by the wizard.
Mm-hmm.
And then because, he's another person from another dimension, he might have powers as a result of coming across, and that is having an effect on the reality of it. It's all about, we're having to jump through an awful lot of hoops here.
I think that's no prizable for me, I'll be honest. I think that does work. I know what you mean about how the ending, just having them all suddenly come back. And to the heroes, they don't know how they came back. No one knows. And the Spectre didn't turn up and say, it was me.
Exactly. No, you're right. I mean, the Spectre just sits in the cloud and they're all sort of going, right, okay,
Okay, glad you're back.
Let's quickly discuss the Spectre. I mean, this is his first appearance in a superhero story in a very long time. And he doesn't interact with the others at all, as you say, so they're going to have no awareness that he was there. It doesn't really follow on. I'm sure there's a letter in the letters page, so we won't say too much more about this. We'll maybe comment on the letter. There's no reference here to the Adventure Comics series.
Nope.
For all we know, this may be, and Steve and I think, eventually decided that this was another Spectre in another continuity, completely separate from the main stuff. So if we're taking it all on that sort of level, is this the Spectre who died in JLA issue 84 reforming himself and coming back?
Well, remember in the middle of the Adventure Comics run, you also had that Brief and Bold story.
Yeah, but we decided that didn't fit into the continuity of Adventure Comics either. So
could this
again, if you're taking it that the Brave and the Bold is always the Earth 1 sort of situation, you can't reconcile this. You really can't. It's sort of, just have to sort of go, right, well, does that mean that this, or does that mean that this? It's very tricky, but it's nice to see the Spectre. He's not going to show up again for a very long time anywhere. I think Showcase 100 and then the issues of Ghosts and maybe another B&B and that's it. He doesn't do an awful lot much from this point onwards before we get to the Crisis. It's nice of him to turn up and bring everyone else back to life, but that's a huge level of power, which I don't think he's ever used elsewhere.
No, not to my knowledge. He certainly has dealt death a lot. Pleading for life is unusual.
Obviously, it's suggested it's the voice of God that he's conversing with. To actually, for God to suddenly go, yeah, all right, I'll make them reappear in the... It's very... Do you know what it is? It's very Russell T Davies season finale, isn't it?
Without a doubt, sir, without a doubt.
It works in a surface level if you just go with it, but if you think about it for 2 minutes, it gets really tricky and really complicated and it kind of falls apart. I'm just glad that Our Man was in it, because that's cool. And it's quite amusing how few... Because I don't think... Did Johnny get any lines when he came back? I don't think he did. So Johnny and Robin don't have any lines in that. Wildcat maybe has a couple, and Dr. Midnight and Thunderbolt get the last say. It's not the best story if you're a fan of the JSA and you want to see them getting up to stuff.
No.
Apart from the Venus flytrap in part 1.
Yes. Yeah, as I said, the big conspiracy cover-up, I think is hilarious. It's great fun. Just, we'll say, let's just stay here. Because obviously these JLAers don't have any lives back on Earth 1.
Exactly. That's a really good point.
It's Barry interdimensionally phoning in sick to work every day.
Yeah. I mean, what are they going to tell Jay and Alan and Ted and the Atom and all that and the rest of the JSA when they get back from space?
Maybe that's what they're waiting on. They're just hanging on and say, sorry guys, but we filled in while we're here. Your pals are dead, but it's good seeing you. We're off.
Yeah. It's tricky.
No, it's the plotting power. That's what it is. It's all the power of the plot. That's
if you say so.
I say so.
If you say so.
So speaks the leader.
I must say, I do quite like that second last page of them all fighting. That is pretty cool. It really does feel like, now that I've said that, a Russell T Davies season finale.
Yeah.
It really, really does. Enough of that and stuff now. Should we go and just have a look at the letters?
Yes, let's skip to issue 128 for the JLA mailroom. My copy of issue 128 has got a Mark Jewelers insert.
Oh, nice.
Which is very cool. So you can get a Donna for $120, matching 14-karat gold wedding bands, Honeymoon and Lohengrin.
Lovely.
Love Star, Elegance, Divine Love. This is all the names of the rings and things here. Oh, a Diamond Ruby Cross for $100. There we are. Star Warrior. The Star Warrior. The Monarch. That's interesting. The Monarch's got a green gem in it, a bit like a power.
All right.
Also, obviously, the one's named after star signs.
For anyone who doesn't know, that the Marks Jewelers insert, what Peter's talking about, is sort of advertisements for jewellery that were inserted into comics that were sent, from what I understand, mainly for people in the services.
Yeah.
So to encourage them to buy jewellery for their loved ones, etc.
Yeah. I mean, there are specific military ones here. 12 military designs to choose from. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Signal, Infantry, Cavalry, Aviation, Artillery, Airborne, Military Police, and Submarine. There we are. That's just what you want. But yeah, it's all intact because there are tear-off bits here, so you can reply and order your And my goodness, $450 for a heavenly love.
Oh my goodness, indeed.
12 fiery diamonds in lovely swirl design. $25 twice monthly for 18 payments. Wow. Yes, that's very expensive.
A couple of letters this time. Oh, Peter has just done a sharp intake of breath. I think he'll want to read the second letter.
Yes, please.
I should read the first one then. JLA Mailroom. Dear Storytellers, whoever said that 13 is an unlucky number was wrong. The 13th annual JLA JSA team-up concluded in 124's Avenging Ghosts of the Justice. See, even that's wrong. Avenging Ghosts. That sort of suggests that maybe their ghosts had hung around and did some of the stuff, and maybe the Spectre maybe interacted with the ghosts and then managed to restore them to full life that way.
When
maybe
we write our DC comic.
That would have worked better, wouldn't it? If maybe another page. Anyway, Avenging goes to the blah 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 with a few expected plot devices and an unexpected denouement for what can only be described as an issue well done. I must confess that I did not believe the JSA members were actually dead until I saw the splash page in this issue, and then I couldn't figure out how you were going to bring them back to life. But when that mysterious wisp appeared on page 5, I immediately thought of the Spectre. As for the comic relief, Elliot S. Maggin, as a frustrated one-man insult factory. One-man insult factory, that's a bad name. Elliot didn't quite end up saving the day as I hoped and expected, but he did at least take Cary Bates out of the fight in the end, doing so while he was unable to lift a hand to help. Some of the scenes with Elliot were priceless, like that bubble. While I am still having misgivings about the manner of the JSA's return to the living, I found Green Arrow's facing up to the fact that JLA had something to do with the Society member's death a plus in his characterisation. I respect him much more now. Congratulations to all are in order. However, special mention must be made of Editor Schwartz. After all, as usual, he had the last word, and that's from Andrew Seigel, Evanston, Illinois. Lots of letters from Illinois in these issues. Steve, get in the car, get your camera, go and take photographs of all the place names. We'll stick an album together at the end of the year. That'll be a lot of fun. If you've got nothing else to do, if classes to teach or, back issues of Unknown Soldier to pick up for me at Comic March. Anyway, editorial response is...
Referring to the last word comment, editor says, the last word inside our offices, Andrew. From outside came a mountain of comments from the real last worders, you readers, says Bob Rozakis.
Yes.
The next letter's from an absolute legend. Dear editor, with such an outrageously imaginative premise, how could two talented writers like Bates and Maggin fizzle out so badly? Avenging Ghosts of the Justice Society undermined everything I was ecstatic about in Where on Earth Am I? It all boils down to the old Deus Ex Machina himself, the Spectre, who asked God to raise our heroes from the dead. I was really disappointed. The appearance of Spec was not only detrimental from the plot standpoint, but also the character showed no continuity with any of his previous appearances. The story would have been far superior excluding him. I was sure that the ultimate confrontation would be between Bates and Maggin themselves, each using their inherent plotting powers to battle the other. For example, where Bates had tricked the JLA into killing the JSA, Maggin could have countered with, but the JSA members aren't really dead, merely in death-like trances. Each would then try to outdo the other's plot machinations, with our heroes caught in the middle. But the fact that Maggin never really figured into the story as anything other than a spectator leads me to believe that he was the weak sister of the collaboration. Too bad, you guys. And that's from legendary Marvel writer and editor, the late great Mark Grunwald.
Absolutely, that's amazing to see. Wonderful. Editorial response to that one is... Since Elliot handled the dialogue and Cary concentrating the action, it's not difficult to see why Mr. Bates had the more active role. About all Elliot could have done was word balloon Cary right out of the picture, from BR. Next letter very short. Dear Elliot and Cary, your justly collaboration... ... I certainly couldn't think of a superlative that would fit. These two issues are going into my permanent library of great issues for my rereading pleasure. I don't think you can top them, but I certainly intend to watch you try. And that's from Sharon M. Harnad, Paducah? KY, Kentucky. Where's that list of states? We need to keep a hold of that. But anyway, there's another very short letter. It goes like this.
Dear editor, after reading Avenging Ghosts of the Justice Society, all I can say is that I wish Bates and Maggin had gotten stranded on Earth 2. And that's from Mark Schmeider from Concord, Massachusetts.
Editorial response in inverted commas, that'd be great, replies Cary. Then Elliot and I could be in every issue of All-Star Comics. There's another reference to something we'll be getting to in the next couple of months at some point, I'm sure. One final letter then. Dear gruff, blustery gentleman, Where on Earth Am I and Avenging Ghosts... ... made for one of the most amusing and action-packed stories
I have ever read in my 10 plus years as a DC fan. Elliot Maggin, Cary Bates, Dick Dillon and Frank McLaughlin really produced a masterpiece of comedy drama, human interest and the most mind-boggling artwork in JLA history. My only complaint is Elliot's comment that Hawkman could bore a grapefruit. I found Carter Hall to be one of your most fascinating characters. And that's from Robert A. Bueth, Elmont, New York.
A lot of readers agree with you, Bob, which is why The Winged Wonder had its own magazine for a number of years in the 60s, and is still flying in some issues of Detective Comics. By the way, it's nice to have an Elmonter writing letters to DC again. There hasn't been one since Bob Rozakis.
Wow.
Says Bob Rozakis.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised at the positivity. Am I being too harsh?
Yes. It's a fun nonsense fluff story.
But given the fact that they died, it's, you'd think it's just a little bit more weight. Like, I don't know.
But the writer's right there. They're literally right there to resurrect them. That's the thing.
No, the thing is, see if they'd actually done that, gone for the whole sort of Grant style, like, writer has influence on the characters thing. Maybe if they'd really pushed it.
It's like the end of the Doctor Who Mind Robber story. Yeah.
See if they'd really gone for that and pushed that up and sort of set, or maybe had the Spectre and Elliot sort of.
Yeah, that
would have been
good.
very postmodern if they'd sort of said, right, I shall now send a Spectre to talk to the voice of God. When we did that Superman story last year from Action Comics, the one about the guy that claimed to create Superman, the guy who got the job in the zoo at the end. That kind of ended up being quite metaphysical, and I don't really think they dived into the potential of that in this story. There could have been, if they'd had it that Elliot and Cary were having direct influence on the characters, that might have been more satisfying, a bit more interesting. It just felt a little undercooked in the end up for me, unfortunately. But if we didn't have occasional constructive criticism, there'd be no point in sort of doing this. Because to be honest, it's rare that we read something and I don't think, oh yeah, it was great fun.
Yeah, very true, very true. That's half the fun of this podcast, is revisiting these classic stories.
And the other half of the fun is getting everyone back to help us out when it's doable. So again, thanks to Chuck for voicing Green Arrow, Kelly for voicing Black Canary, Steve again as Batman and Johnny Thunder, Kenny coming back as Dr. Midnight. Please check out Power 3. Gavin, hi Gav, waving. Probably see you tomorrow. Gav voicing the Thunderbolt. JSAer Jim, of all people, amazing, voicing Robin. And Kirby Evans doing an astonishing turn as the Flash. Kirby will be getting you back.
Fantastic, yes. Without a doubt.
And great work, of course, as well by Peter Watson as Aquaman and Hawkman there.
Thank you very much.
You're
welcome. And you were excellent as everyone else.
No, I wasn't.
Pretty much.
Perfectly. I was absolutely adequate, so that's fine.
There we go. And I would like to thank Elliot S. Maggin for joining us in this episode in his very special role as the voice of God. I thought it would be quite appropriate to have the creator of the story play the creator in the story. A nice surprise for our listeners and also for David, because he had no idea it was happening until he's listening to this episode right now. Thank you, Elliot. You're an absolute gentleman.
So, we mentioned last week that JS April
is imminent.
Is that what's happening next?
No.
Oh, right, okay.
It's nearly imminent.
It's nearly imminent, yes. In the meantime,
you can write to us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media, because we're putting up some lovely bonus material for this and indeed every episode. On Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth 2 Podcast, and on Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it is the number 2 for all of our socials.
It pure is. So yeah, like I should have mentioned Power 3 there, but go and check out the Boxing Glove Arrow podcast, go and check out Pesca Parisienne. Kirby's doing a lot of work with Ross just now on Stop Let's Team Up. Kirby's doing a little solo meander through Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew, which is very good. And obviously Kirby and Ross regularly talk about all sorts of stuff, so make sure you check them out. And, as I always say at this point, if you're enjoying what we're doing, please consider going to wherever it is you receive your podcasts and giving us a positive review. You can visit our coffee page if you can find it. You can buy Pete at the price of a beverage, all that sort of stuff. If you enjoyed these episodes, please do consider sharing them on your own social media and helping us spread the word. These episodes taken a lot of work to get them together, and we're really grateful to everyone, to all our international co-hosts and voices for their continued help and support. We really appreciate, people like Chuck and Steve and Kelly coming back and doing these voices for us again, when they've all got lots of other stuff that they could be doing. So we do appreciate it, folks. We really do.
Yes, we certainly do. Thank you very much. And in that bombshell, I've been Peter.
I've been David. We'll see you next week on
the Earth 2 Podcast.
Transmatter Cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
Sorry. A bit of tuna fish has appeared at the end of my tongue. Never shall I allow profanity such as has been brought about by the Justice Society to go unpublished. Unpublished. Of course. Oh dear. Right.
I'm still Elliot S. Maggin.